Welcome back to this next video where I want to do something about manufacturing again without actually going into the manufacturing module. What I'd like to show is the projects task module. I actually want to get to the invoice because that's the interesting part where I did a few modifications. But let's tackle that in the context of a project. Let's dive straight into it. Okay, what do you have? Projects and tasks. The relationship is one project has got many tasks. Now, typically, I'm used to a production type of execution type of environment. So, your project would be, if it's a big capital project, the putting up of a substation or something like this. And if you look at it from a non-manufacturing, non-capital point of view, it can also be the person giving an advisory service to a customer. Okay, and of course, within that context, you can have different types of tasks. In the case of putting up a big substation, you would have design meetings, planning, purchasing of equipment, delivery of equipment, that type of tasks. And from a more advisory consulting point of view, you'd have meeting and then support, or if it's a computer type of thing, maybe remote support or something like this. So there's many ways you can actually apply this. Right, I've created a project. Obviously, if you want to create a new one, you use new. I have got your start date, end date. There's a priority assigned to it. Of course, you can make note, or you can change the department in your company that's involved in this. There's your status. The project type, there's two types of this stage, internal, external. It's just for you to be able to sort your projects. And of course, you can add different project types as well. Okay, is it active or not? And then, of course, you've got your completion method of calculation. You can either have manual or task completion, task progress, and task wait. And there's a website somewhere here that actually shows you how the percentage completion is calculated depending on which method you use. Customer detail, of course, you fill that in there. Who's your customer? Start and end dates. There we go. I've written it down. We're starting on the 2nd of the 3rd, and we expect to be finished by the 7th of the 3rd. Costing and billing, this is a paid or a panel where you have a summary of your costs and billing, etc. There's your costing from a timesheet point of view. There's your expense, any expense claims, sales amount, billable amount, how many hours did you bill, etc. So that gives you a cost overview. All right, so that's your project. Now, of course, each project has got tasks. I've created a few tasks here. We start off with a planning meeting, then there's setting up of equipment, and you've got an executing your plan task, and then, of course, there's a FAT and a sign-off. All right, so these are the tasks which I create. If you want to create a new task, new, and you fill in the detail. For instance, the sign-off would be allocated to project test 5. That's a project I've created. What's the status? The subject. What are you going to call this task? We call it sign off. The type of task is a drop down. For this one, it was a meeting. You can fill in an employee that actually completed the task. And of course, you can assign a color. That's for the Gantt chart. Now, you'll see that there's an extra field here which you don't see. Don't worry about it. It's something that I put in, custom field, which allows your task to be linked to a production plan. Documentation suggests that ERPNext can actually display your production plan progress as a Gantt chart, but I've been unable to find it. If you can, maybe drop it down in the comment section. So I've did this extra field. I'll make a video about that later on, how it works. Then, of course, I've got a timeline for this particular task. It'll be the 7th. We start on the 7th, end on the 7th, and we expect it to take 8 hours. And a place where you can write some notes. All right, so this is what each task looks like. All right, and if you want to look at your Gantt chart, you click on Gantt chart, and there you see all the tasks. You indicate a dependency like this. So this task is dependent on that one being finished. Okay. Right. And of course, you, as your tasks become complete, you can open up the task and you can indicate them to be completed. All right, that's why you can see here that some tasks are they're still being worked on. All right, you won't have a sign-off meeting being worked off while the FAT's busy. This is just a bunch of tasks which are put together to show it on a video. So there's completed tasks and working tasks. All right. Right, let's get to the interesting part. If you want to do your invoicing, you go to Project and you choose your relevant project. And I've already got 2 sales invoices. Let me raise another sales invoice. Okay, so your customer is an imaginary person that I've thought of. The name. Due by the 31st. Accounting dimensions, that's your project, that's your cost center. Customer, if your customer is giving you a purchase order. And of course any addresses. Now there's a form that you fill in, address list, where you link persons, customers, contacts, leads, anything to a particular address. Any person, even a user, can have an address. Your company can have an address. So that links all the addresses to somebody. What else do we want here? All right. Let's just add a row now. Now we're going to fill in all our items that we want to charge to the customer. Here we've got I wonder if let me just have a look with my projects, timesheets. No, we didn't raise a timesheet. Yeah, I thought there was something missing. We were looking at this task. I must still generate a timesheet. All right. On the company, right, you can fill in employee detail. This is a meeting. We say we expect it to take 8 hours. So it's a meeting on the 7th. From 8 o'clock on the 7th to 1500 hours on the 7th. Right, 9 hours. It is billable. We are going to bill 9 hours at that billing rate. And of course you can keep track of your costs as well. Did I fill in everything? Yeah. You can make notes here as well. Save it. And we submit. All right, so we'll just reload because I want to clear that invoice that we started. So we say project, and we're going to restart our invoice. I'm going to say I want to generate an invoice. There we go. And our customer is some imaginary name. The due date is going to be the 31st of March. Accounting dimensions, that's a project, that's the cost center. If you take a purchase order, then you fill it in there. Any address information. Now this is set up in a different form. There's a form called address list, which links any person, a customer, a supplier, a lead, to a particular address. All right, so that's why it auto-completed, because it was linked to this name. Cool. And you can see our timesheet has been automatically pulled in here, because it can see that the timesheet hasn't been billed yet. All right, so now we add the items for our invoice. Now these items has been defined previously. We say subcontracting services. I'll show you where I've set that up. Now this is for information. It doesn't actually add that 4,500 automatically to the invoice. You can see there. So this is for invoices, for information's sake, and you add the 9 hours there, and then you get your 4,500 Rand. Right, what else can we add here? We can add equipment use. All right, I'll show you where I define these things. I've been busy with my equipment for 1 day, and I charge 700 Rand a day. This, of course, is for some premium that you work out. How do you determine that? Everybody's going to have a different way of calculating this, but obviously you've got to go and buy tools, and that's going to cost you 20,000 Rand to get all the required tools. And you say, okay, well, if I claim or cost the customer for 700 Rand a job, then I'll pay off this equipment within a certain period of time. All right, so I've added that. Let me just go and show you where I've defined these items. It's in my item master list, and we search for all the services related items, and there you have it. Equipment using, living out allowance, traveling distance for subcontracting. All right, so we can add all these. Let me just show you what one of them looks like. That's equipment usage. It's under the services group. You untick the maintain, stock, and the include in manufacturing. You can add a description if you want to. The unit of measure is day, because I'm allocating 700 Rand a day for that. And of course, well, there can't be a stores in here, so let's take that out. And you fill in your cost center, and you can also assign the expense account against which this is going to run. All right, I've opened up an account called equipment usage, so I can keep track of this. You can set that up. All right, there's no supplier. You can't purchase that. Actually, let's take that off. It's a sales item. The default measure is day. All right. And in such a way, I've set up all the other items. Living out allowance, same type of thing, and that's against the travel expenses expense account. So you create an account however you want to do that. You can have a high level of granularity where you literally have an expense account for everything, or you can just put everything against travel expenses. All right. The motto I use is keep it simple. Have one account that puts everything together roughly that is about traveling. But you might differ. Right, so you can set up your item which is linked to a particular expense account. Let's go back to my sales invoice. So we can add living out allowance. Living out allowance. That's of course for your food. So I was gone for 2 days, and there's a certain amount that you can claim, $250 a day or something like this. All right, and traveling, and I traveled 700 kilometers. The rate is R5.28 per kilometer. All right, and so you can carry on. You can keep track of all the items which are going billed towards your customer. And this is then, of course, already built into that first item. Last but not least, you can add your tax, or well, what you can also do is add maybe some administrative cost for a SIM card or something like this. And then you can add your VAT. No, that's not on, that'll be on the previous row total. You can set how you calculate the VAT. Is it on that total or is it on that total? Right, I did it on that total, and the account against which it's going to go is the VAT account, and the rate is 15%. You can use text templates for this. I just fill it in by hand. And you can just go and make sure that it's against the right account, 5113, 15%, that's the amount, and then that's your total. The administrative cost will go to that account, 5201, yet an account which you create on your chart of accounts to keep track of your administrative expenses. Right, I think that's about it. I'll go and show you the chart of accounts just now, just for interest's sake. And we can say save. And we submit that. All right, and if you want to print it out nicely, you click the print button and you choose the right template. You can make this default. And there it prints everything. There's all your items. That item relates to the time, all the timesheets. Of course, if you add more than one, it'll list all the timesheets. And there's your equipment usage, living out allowance, traveling allowance. There's your administrative expenses, and there's your VAT, and there's your total. All right, so there's your invoice, nicely with your customer address as well. Just a quick one. I'm going to show you quickly the chart of accounts. And this is where you would, this actually was created in slightly the wrong place. It should be under indirect expenses. But nonetheless, there's administrative expenses. There's the traveling expenses. There's the accommodation. You create an account under your indirect expenses to cater for all these things. All right, so that's where you create all your accounts. Right, so that was a very quick tour through project and tasks. I actually wanted to get to the invoicing just to show you did I actually show what I wanted to show you? That's a good question. This, where you print your, it gets the print format out here again. There we go. Where you actually print your timesheet information. It doesn't come standard on the sales invoice. You actually have to incorporate it in there. But I think it makes for a nice looking bit where you can actually explain where does all that come from. In this case, it's rather simple. But if you've got multiple timesheets, you can even attach a copy of each timesheet onto your invoice to show your customer for which of the timesheets was logged, well, which of the timesheets was logged for which activity or task. All right. Okay, hope that made you think of how you would actually use and apply all this in your business.